Do you choose, or does something choose through you? It's a question that sounds abstract, philosophical, the kind of thing you might discuss over wine at midnight, until you realize it's happening right now. In this very moment, as you decide whether to keep watching, whether to lean in or scroll away. Except you've already decided. Haven't you? The decision was made before you knew you were making it, before the thought formed into words, before consciousness arrived to claim authorship of something it merely witnessed. We like to think of ourselves as rational agents, captains of our own ships. We deliberate, we weigh options, we consider consequences. We sit with decisions like they're puzzles to be solved. Should I take this job? End this relationship? Move to another city? We make lists, pros and cons. We consult friends, read articles, lie awake at night turning it over and over. And then, finally, we choose. Or so we tell ourselves. But what if the choice was never really happening in those moments of careful consideration? What if it was already decided weeks ago, in a conversation you've forgotten, in a feeling you dismissed, in a dream that dissolved upon waking? You see it in the way you explain your decisions to others, how the reasons come so easily, so coherently, as if you planned them all along. I left because of the commute, you say. I stayed because of the stability. The narrative is clean, logical, convincing. But if you're honest, truly honest, there's something strange about how perfectly the story fits. Almost too perfect. As if you were reverse engineering meaning onto something that simply happened. You see it too in the decisions you regret, the ones where you say, I don't know what I was thinking. Except that's the point. You weren't thinking, not consciously. Something else was running the show, and you were just the narrator trying to make sense of the script after it had already been performed. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure of character. This is how we're built. And that's precisely what makes it so unsettling. There's a particular discomfort that comes with this realization, a kind of vertigo. Because if you're not choosing, then who are you? What does it mean to be you if the decisions that seem to define you were made by processes you have no access to? One part of you wants to reject this entirely, to insist on your agency, your autonomy, your freedom. I am the author of my life, this part says. Every choice is mine. But there's another part, quieter, more honest, that recognizes the truth in this. The part that has watched you choose the same type of person over and over, despite swearing you wouldn't. The part that has seen you make promises to yourself that dissolve like sugar in water. The part that knows, deeply knows, that you are not as in control as you pretend to be. And beneath both of these, there's a third voice, the one that whispers, if I'm not choosing, then maybe I'm not responsible. Maybe I'm off the hook. And this, perhaps, is the most seductive and dangerous thought of all. I spent years believing I was making careful, deliberate choices, that I was steering my life with intention. And then one day, in therapy, I was asked, when did you actually decide that? About a relationship I'd ended, a job I'd left. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't pinpoint the moment. There was no moment. The decision had already been made by the time I became aware I was making it. What I thought was choosing was just noticing, narrating, claiming credit for something that had already happened. And the strangest part? I felt relieved, not defeated, relieved, because it meant I could stop pretending to be the sole author of everything, stop carrying the weight of total control. But it also meant facing something more unsettling. If I wasn't choosing, then what was I doing? Where does this come from, this illusion of conscious choice? It begins perhaps in childhood, when we're told we're making decisions. What do you want for dinner? Which shirt do you want to wear? small moments designed to teach autonomy. But what we're really learning is to narrate our preferences as if they originated with us, when in fact they're shaped by 1,000 invisible forces. By what our parents approved of, by what our peers validated, by cultural scripts so old and so pervasive we mistake them for our own thoughts. We grow up in a world that insists on individual agency, on personal responsibility, on the idea that you are the sum of your choices. And so we learn to construct stories of deliberation, of weighing options, of arriving at conclusions. We become fluent in the language of choice. But fluency is not the same as truth. The neuroscience tells us something uncomfortable. Decisions happen in the brain before we're conscious of them, milliseconds before, sometimes longer, which means that by the time you feel yourself deciding, the decision has already been made by parts of you that you will never meet. Spinoza understood this centuries before neuroscience could prove it. He wrote that we believe ourselves free only because we are conscious of our actions, but ignorant of the causes that determine them. We are like stones thrown into the air, he said, who imagine themselves flying by their own will, unaware of the hand that threw them. The stone feels the flight. It might even narrate its trajectory with pride. I chose to arc this way, it might say. I decided to spin clockwise. But the stone did not choose. The hand chose. And we are not so different. What we call free will, Spinoza suggested, is simply ignorance of the forces acting upon us. This doesn't mean we're puppets. It means we're more like rivers than captains. Rivers don't choose their path, yet they move with purpose, shaped by terrain we cannot see. The question isn't whether you choose. The question is, what happens when you stop pretending you do? So, here is the paradox. The unbearable, unsolvable paradox. You cannot choose to stop believing in choice. You cannot decide to accept that decision is an illusion, because the moment you try, you're caught in the same trap. Choosing not to choose. Deciding that decisions don't exist. The very act of accepting this truth requires the machinery you're trying to disavow. You are, in essence, a consciousness that must operate as if it has agency, even while knowing, deeply knowing, that agency might be the most elaborate story you've ever told yourself. And yet, you must keep telling it. Because without it, there is nothing. No responsibility, no meaning, no you. But what if the question itself is wrong? What if asking, do I choose, is like asking, does the wave choose to crash? The wave is the ocean expressing itself through a particular form. It doesn't choose to be a wave. It simply is one. And perhaps you are not so different. Perhaps you are not a separate agent making choices, but a process unfolding. A pattern of consciousness expressing itself through decisions that feel personal, but are really just. What's happening? This doesn't diminish you. It changes what you means. You are not the author. You are the story being written, not the captain, but the ship, the ocean, and the journey all at once. And maybe, just maybe, the freedom you've been searching for was never about control. It was about recognizing what you actually are. You are not the one choosing. You are what choosing looks like when it happens through a human nervous system. Read that again. You are not the one choosing. You are what choosing looks like when it happens through a human nervous system. This is not a loss of agency. This is a recognition of what agency actually is. Not a separate self pulling levers from inside a control room, but a process so intimate, so immediate, that it feels like you, because it is you, just not in the way you thought. The question was never, do I have free will? The question is, what am I? And the answer might be more beautiful and more terrifying than you imagined. You are not less than you thought. You are more. You are the entire process, mistaking itself for a single voice. Think of it this way. You're standing at a crossroads. Two paths stretch before you. You believe you're deciding which one to take. But what's actually happening is this: your history, your biology, your unprocessed grief, your unnamed fears, your parents' voices, your culture's values, a conversation from 3 years ago, a dream you half remember, the weather, your blood sugar, the angle of light through the trees. All of it is converging in this moment, not separately, not as distinct factors you're weighing, but as a single, unified force moving through you. And what you call deciding is simply the moment when all of this crystallizes into awareness, into a story you can tell. You didn't choose the path. The path chose itself through you. And recognizing this doesn't make you powerless. It makes you honest, because now you can stop fighting with yourself. Stop pretending you're two separate things, the chooser and the choice. You are the choosing, all of it, the entire beautiful, terrifying process. Does this solve the paradox? Does it make living easier? Not necessarily. You will still agonize over decisions. You will still lie awake wondering if you chose correctly. You will still carry the weight of consequences, because that's what consciousness does. It narrates. It claims authorship. It experiences itself as separate, even when it knows it isn't. And perhaps that's okay. Perhaps the point isn't to resolve the paradox, but to hold it. To live inside the tension between knowing you don't choose and feeling like you do. To be both the river and the one who names it. This is what it means to be human. To be caught between stories. And maybe, just maybe, there's a strange kind of freedom in that. If you've stayed with me through all of this, through the vertigo and the paradox and the unsettling questions, thank you. It means something moved in you. Some recognition, perhaps, of a truth you've been living with, but haven't had words for. You're not alone in this. None of us are. We're all navigating the same impossible territory, all trying to make sense of being conscious in a universe that might not need our consent. This week, I want to offer you a question, not an exercise, not a task, just something to notice. The next time you make a decision, any decision, pause for a moment and ask yourself, when did I actually decide this? Can you find the exact moment? Or does it feel more like you're discovering a choice that's already been made? There's no right answer, no insight you need to force, just curiosity, just attention. Because sometimes the most profound shift happens not when we find answers, but when we learn to hold questions differently. Picture a river that believes it's choosing its path. It feels the rocks, the descent, the widening into delta. It narrates its journey with such conviction. I chose to turn here, it says. I decided to slow there. And in a way, it's not wrong. It is choosing. It's just that the choosing and the river are the same thing. You are the river, and the rocks, and the ocean it's flowing toward. You are all of it. The choice and the choosing, and the story about both. And perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What came up for you? What questions are you holding now? And if you want to explore more ideas like this, subscribe to the channel and check out the video I've recommended for you on screen. It continues this conversation in ways you might find illuminating. Until then, keep questioning, keep wondering, keep being the beautiful paradox you are.